at this point, gotta laugh. Yeah. What's the alternative? Honestly, this is the perfect discussion for this, managing emotion. First, we gotta manage ourselves and our own emotions.
And the annoyance.
What if that we gave that as an example? Well,
When you come to the seminar, your slides are not ready.
yeah, actually,
The conference
recently,
is really over there. Recently, there was a time.
hmm
So if the music, what does that mean?
I won't sing anymore.
I don't keep
I could sing yes the whole time. Yes, if I could just sing, I'd be great.
folks. We just started entertaining.
See you then, baby.
I said you can just start to entertain.
I know, right? Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
a lot more people than the last round.
Well, no, people slept in today at 8 o'clock. People slept in at 8 o'clock.
That was a really early start.
Yeah, it was an early start.
Are we good to begin in the back? We are? Okay. We can come on in, folks. It'd be awesome. We can get started this morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? Am I too loud? Yes, thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name again is Angela Peak. I'm joined by my panelists, Lisa Davis and Shannon Armfield Big-Agno. Yes, these are two lovely ladies that I have met at the conference, and it's just been so wonderful. We want to get started today with talking about conversations on how we can manage emotion tension, how we can develop some strategies for navigating personality disagreements and conflict in the workplace. So we're going to start off with some objectives. And this is us. I'm Angela Peak on the left, Lisa Davis and Shannon Armfield Big-Agno. Moving through our objectives this morning, we want to first start off with the 3 C's of conflict and communication. We want to be clear. We want to know exactly what the conflict is all about. We want to know, what is that impact if the conflict is not resolved? How can we get clarity and get past this? We want to be curious. We all know that conflict is going to happen. As we facilitate difficult conversations in the workplace, there's going to be moments of tension. How can we get past that? How can we lean into that discomfort and learn from it? How can we come out with a win-win? And then we want to be calm. And that's the one where I started off my whole entire career at Leidos was on conflict. It started off with me being uncalm. I came into the workplace excited, I was energized, and I was ready. I had to get my security clearance, and it all was downhill from there. I was not calm. I was a homeless teenager, so I started my life off in the rear. So I had a lot of catching up to do. So when I got my first job, it was based on a security clearance. So they had to do a background investigation. But I had no home, I had no address in the past, and that worried them. So they came at me with lots of stereotypes. You know, how can you live where you live and not answer these questions correctly? You know, you're not telling us the truth on your polygraph. You're a liar. You're not doing this right. You don't belong here. We don't want you and we don't need you. That's how I started my career, day one. I got my GED, which was very successful for me as a homeless teenager. I got my GED, I went to computer school, I got my first job, it was a guarantee, first job. I walk in the first day, I felt so fancy. I had on nice clothes, I had my hair done, and I was ready to go. And then that door was closed in my face on day one. I had to turn around and start all over again. And I was uncalm. I went into that interview room, I sat in front of the panel, and they looked at me and they judged me. And they told me, you're a liar and you don't belong here. And they left me sitting in the room for, I know, 20 minutes, but it was only 2, but it felt like 20. So I'm sitting there, I'm sweating, and I'm so nervous. What's gonna happen now? You know, they're telling me no, I didn't pass this polygraph, I allowed all my questions. It's like, now what am I gonna do? So I went into this rage, and I don't know where it came from. It was like an out-of-body experience. I felt like the Incredible Hulk. I started throwing furniture. My shoes was flying off, felt like my clothes was coming off, and I stormed out of Fort Meade. I was on NSA grounds, and I ran home. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried. Said, I am never gonna make it. You know, my past is always gonna catch up with me. But now I'm here today. I've overcome all of that. Feeling really good about myself, but I would have loved to learn how to manage those emotions on that day because it didn't go well. You know, it could have gone really bad. I could have got arrested. You know, I'm destroying federal property here. You know, so it could have turned a different corner for me, but luckily it was for the positive. I did get the job after some negotiations. I did get the job. I got my security clearance. I worked at DocuData for 10 years. It was later bought out by SAIC. Then later we turned into Leidos, and this is how I got here today. So we're going to turn it over to our panel, and we're going to start with the 5 strategies of managing difficult personalities. And this is where I needed my help a long time ago, you know, with helping me to be calm. And what are those strategies to help me navigate through the workplace, navigate those uncomfortable situations? So I'm going to turn it over to our panelists, and I'm going to start with Lisa.
So good morning, everyone. Happy Friday, 13th even, right? My name is Lisa Davis, and my story is not nearly as interesting as Angela, but I grew up in staffing, so my background is in technical recruiting, staffing, HR, cleared space, federal space, and I made a pivot about 4 years ago, and I now am the service delivery manager of a NASA program. So again, not nearly as interesting. I should have gone first.
Or maybe I should have gone first.
Exactly.
My name is Shannon Armfield Begonio. I put the Begonio in. I got married a couple years ago, but for those who get married later in life and have their career and their careers on, you know, based on their last name, it's kind of hard to just give that name up. So that may be forever, or maybe this is just my transition. But my name's Shannon Armfield Begonio. I'm a divisional practice lead at Actalent Services. We're a talent solutions company, so staffing and recruiting, consulting, and I specifically am in the healthcare, clinical, and scientific space, so all within the STEM world. And I've been doing that for 12 years, all with the same company. So I am not on the recruiting side, but I manage a team of recruiters in that space and account managers as well.
All right, ladies, you want to dive into our 5 strategies?
Yes.
And we'll talk through those to our group today.
Yeah, so I can start with that. I'll kind of go through the couple. So we really wanted today to kind of be a dialogue. This is such a meaty topic. We could probably spend hours, maybe days talking about it. And every scenario is different. We'd love to hear from the crowd throughout this, just situations or questions that you have. But each situation, like I said, is very different. So we came up with some strategies, tools that are easy to remember, that you can kind of reference when things are maybe not what you're wanting it to be. So the first is, it's not about you. That seems harsh, and maybe it is. It's ego. It's not about you as your ego. When it comes to conflicts and conflicts of personality, whether you're managing a couple of people or a team that's in conflict, or maybe you're in conflict with someone, it's really important to take a step back, remove your ego, which is maybe the hardest thing to do. And ego just isn't about being egotistical or cocky or some of those more boisterous personality characteristics that can seem really off-putting. Ego can just be, you're taking it really personally. You're getting really upset by it. Those are the ego characteristics that it's really important to just take a step back. It's not about me. Let me seek to understand. So it's not about you. Set boundaries. So Boundaries are super important when it comes to this, because whether you're dealing with someone who maybe needs a heavy boundary or you're dealing with someone that maybe needs a little bit of a lighter boundary, it's important to establish those when you're going through something like this.
And then so I'll pick up on 3, which is developing relationships. And that is a strong suit for me. I have found that even in conflict, if you know the person, right, your first thought is this what John would typically do? This doesn't seem in alignment with their personality, right? And so relationships are critical with your customers, right? So for the sales folks in the room or for the account managers in the room, your customers are never going to be totally happy with you. The customers are always going to have a challenge. And if you have a relationship with them, they're less likely to be so combative, right? So the thought is that if they know you, we can deal with conflict, and then outside of that, you still have that relationship, right? So that then allows those tense conversations to, where maybe you didn't deliver, maybe your person didn't quite show up, maybe things didn't quite go right, the product didn't land where we thought it was gonna land. You have that relationship. And so for me, I'm a huge relationship builder. It's helped me in my career throughout my career. It's one of my strong suits. My colleague is sitting in the office. I talk to everyone. I'll talk to a tree if you let me. I understand, and I have been in the benefit of what a powerful relationship can do professionally, relationship from a customer. It just, take the time, take 10 minutes to get to know somebody. You would be surprised how much mindless information I have in my head, but how much it helps me. People's soccer games, who has a wife, who doesn't, those kind of things that go such a long way in building relationships. And number 4 is self-regulation. And so I learned this later in my career. And to kind of your point about ego, right? It kind of, that self-regulation and ego can very much be aligned and get us in very precarious situations. I think we can't always say what we're thinking, right? And I think that I heard in the panel the other day, the truth does not always set you free. And that is absolutely accurate. There are some times when you know the truth, but you want to have empathy, and you absolutely have to just not always be right. Sometimes, trying to set a good ground, being compromising in situations will take you much further than sometimes saying, I won, I said the truth, and now everyone's upset, right? So I think that sometimes it's easy to want to flip off, right? If someone is saying something that you don't believe, or if someone took credit for your work, or if someone's in a situation where you're like, that was my idea, we just talked about that, then they get into a meeting, it always comes out in the wash. It always does. And I think that if we just are unable to self-regulate, it can impede us in lots of other areas too, like in leadership. If you're trying to go up the ranks, that kind of thing, you don't want to be known as the person that doesn't have self-control, that doesn't know when to speak and when not to speak. And when not to speak is, let me say that one more time, and when not to speak, right? Being the loudest person in the room is not always the answer. Typically, the folks I know that always are the last folks in the room to speak. The great leaders and my mentors are always typically the last person in the room to speak. They take it all in, they understand, they assess the situation, the problem, the audience, and then they chime in with all the information. So for me, that self-regulation, again, I had some bumps along the way early on until I really got that, but once I got it, it served me well. It's definitely served me well. And then we'll pivot. I think we're gonna both talk about have trust support. So you wanna start?
Yeah, so have trusted support. This is super critical, and it can come up in a few different forms. So if you think of trusted support, these are your pillars that you lean on in the company. These are not people that you just complain to. They're not the people that just say, oh, that situation really does suck, or that person is terrible, you're right. These are the people that are gonna challenge you and push back on you, and you're gonna walk away feeling like you have solutions, not just, oh, I feel a lot better because they understand where I'm coming from. That being said, those people are also important, and sometimes they show up more in our personal lives. Venting is healthy. We don't want to bottle things up. That was something that I learned later on in life from one of my mentors and previous director. I would get to the point where I wouldn't be venting. I would kind of take it all in. I'm kind of a calmer personality. I don't have a lot of these, and I like to keep it that way, but sometimes it would get so bad, and then I would just break, and that would show up in the form of crying, usually, by myself or to my spouse, but it's really important to have those people that you can vent to so that you're not bottling things up and releasing it in maybe an unhealthy way.
Understood. And I take a little bit of a different pivot in that church support can also mean mentors, sponsors, and then that relationship that you can have sometime with a boss or a colleague. But I think that we sometimes confuse mentors and sponsors, and they're different people. And then advocates, right? So all those people can manifest itself. So, you can look at it kind of from having a relationship. We can talk to your spouse, your colleague, but I also look at that as having sponsors, advocates, and mentors. And all those people can be, and they should be different people, right? Because an advocate will maybe speak on your behalf in a room that you're not in, right? But your mentor may not necessarily be that person. That's a different person, right? So I definitely encourage people to have mentors, sponsors, and advocates, especially in these larger companies where sometimes it's hard for those of us to get a seat at the table or for us to get our name in rooms or to be put in for promotions or things like that. If you have people at every tier in that support system for you, one of those people should be able to show up for you all the time in spaces that you need it. So for me, I look at that definitely from that perspective, and I encourage everyone to have each one of those folks in your space.
So I have a question to piggyback on that, so I can avoid throwing chairs and, coming outside of myself in a situation where I don't have a mentor, I'm not sponsored, I don't have a clue, I'm walking in cold, I'm blind, I have no idea what's happening when I walk into the room. How can I be more prepared, to avoid that conflict of the unknown? I'm facing folks that are, vice presidents, maybe they're CEOs, and I'm a little further down the ladder, so I'm walking into uncomfortableness just to start with. What could be a strategy for me where I'm not so nervous and I'm timid and I stand back and I don't say anything? Because if I do, I might, get a little off-put and maybe angry because I might have anger issues, So, what's some advice to help me out, in that situation?
So I see this twofold, right? So I'm going to ask that question in two phases. If you don't have a mentor, you got to be vulnerable. Throw yourself out there. Let folks know that you want to learn. And you'd be surprised how much people like to talk about themselves. They really do. If you ask the right questions, but I also think that you also want to be upfront about that you want a mentor, right? Because I think that sometimes people build relationships and they want you to be the mentor, but they don't really know how to ask. But people like to talk about themselves, and most times people want to help you. They do. They really, really do, especially if you're upfront about what you're looking for. So I would encourage you to get a mentor, but then to answer that second portion of that question, you've got to self-regulate, right? I think that you have to step back and you really have to look at what's happening, right? Because I think the thing is, if you don't have self-control over you, then that's going to be problematic in everywhere else, right? You know what I mean? And so I think that self-talk, I talk to myself all the time. I'm my best listener most times. And so, you got to talk, I practice self-talk. It's like, this is going to be great. I'm coming to win today. We're going to do this, right? Because I think if you can't regulate yourself, there's no way out. And you can.
Yeah, yes, I would agree with that. I think if you can prepare, that's also super helpful. So even if you maybe are uncomfortable to go right to the top and seeking that advice, going to people who have maybe been there a little bit longer or maybe are in the rooms. I loved what you said, when the people that are in the rooms that you're not in, who's advocating for you, going to more of those people and getting them to talk about their story and then sharing yours as well. I think when we can strip down the the business talk and just get to the person, that's when the connections are made. And that's when people actually fight and speak for you in those rooms. So if you can prepare, even reaching out in emails or phone calls and introducing yourself before you get there, that makes the room a little bit warmer when you get in.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on the topic? Use the mic, please. We want to have lots of time for questions from the group. In my other sessions, we ran out of time with questions, so we want to start early.
Yeah. This is a meaty topic.
I love it.
All right.
We don't have to pick on people. I love it.
Could you speak a little bit more on setting boundaries? What are we talking about specifically as far as boundaries?
Yeah. So I'm coming from a place, so my background, I work with clients or customers, but a lot of what I do is on the team side. So we are a performance-driven company. We operate as like a high-performing team, and so with that, it's maybe not, we're not dealing with products. It's a lot of the people that I hire and have on my team are more on the communications or the marketing side of things. We deal with that industry, but it's a lot of people. And I think every business comes down to like the people business. But when it comes to setting boundaries, what I look at, and this is more coming from like more recent examples, when we come to work or when people come to work, they are bringing their life with them. So there's personal stuff that happens in their lives that is affecting work or how they're showing up. So if you have someone on your team who is getting maybe really emotional, or maybe their self-esteem is a little bit low, or maybe they have those outbursts, really seeking to understand why are they that way, or asking them questions like, hey, what else is going on? And if it's coming in the way of their work, and being specific on what's that output that they're needing to do, setting boundaries around, and honestly, like for yourself, of, okay, I'm not going to maybe engage in that way with them, or hey, I hear you, I appreciate what you're saying and where you're coming from, but I need you to do X, Y, and Z. This is important professionally, and I know that that's important to you. So setting boundaries in that way, and boundaries in the workplace can also show up in, well, it's maybe not pertinent to this situation, but maybe it's walking away from a situation. So if things are getting really heated, I'm going to take a step away. That can kind of go along with self-regulation too, of like stepping away, being mindful. And you may be interacting with someone who is really maybe aggressive, or has a lot of, so that's where that dial comes into play. So for those who maybe are more difficult individuals, you may need to be very stern with, hey, this is the boundary that I'm setting, but maybe people who are a little bit softer, you're not as aggressive whenever you share that.
Hi, I'm Nicole Scott. I'm also with Actalent Services. I have a question more a little bit on developing relationships. I'm just wondering if you have tips on how to deal with an employee that, on a professional level, they're doing a great job, but you just don't get along with them on a personal level.
So, we literally just had this conversation over breakfast this morning, and I'm going to give you the exact quote that I told my colleague: "Respect is required, liking is optional." When I lead teams, you will respect each other. You will.
That's a boundary.
It's not a romper room. I think liking's helpful, but I think that when we get larger teams, when you get into staffing, when you're in government contracting, where there's so many personalities and there's so much going on, you just may not love everybody. And that's okay, but I think if you always lead from respect, I'm gonna respect what you do, I'm gonna respect you in a professional, but and that's just my honest answer. You guys will learn, I'm not gonna tell you fluff. I live by that. Respect is required, liking is optional. It really is. It really is. So, but I think that you can. I guess if I step back, I think that you can try to cultivate those relationships, as you try to learn maybe more about them, maybe try to find some commonality, right? Do you both like to run? Do you like dogs? Something like that. I found that sometimes that's helpful. But, coming back in my staffing days, they just didn't like each other, full stop. Like they were just polar opposite people, and they were like oil and water. And that's, and so I think that you'll find that. But I think that to maybe try to find some commonality could be helpful.
The commonality, and I don't know if this is like normal to do this, but I look at like my family and my friends, and they're all different. And so sometimes I try to, even if it's not commonality with what I like to do they have something that is in common with someone that I really care about? And then I kind of bucket them into that. So for instance, I work a lot with men who may like to hunt or like sports. That's not my thing. So that's kind of hard to maybe find that commonality, but I have people in my family that do that. So then I can kind of bucket them and, okay, I can appreciate you for who you are, personality-wise.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Darcy Snedeker, also with Actilent Services. My question is really on self-regulation. This topic in general I've become passionate about it in recent years, but before that, I wouldn't have really understood what is that, how do you get into it? And to me, what I'm more curious about is if you could share some things about how to explore that, because it's more than just tips and tricks. It's really a matter of understanding self and how our bodies work. And there's a lot that goes into it. So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit more about how can people really get into that space to understand how to self-regulate beyond just, taking a walk. That is a great tip, don't get me wrong, but how can they dive deep to understand? Because if you don't have that depth of understanding in that moment of emotion, it's going to be difficult to put those tools into action.
So I find that self-regulation and ego go hand in hand. So I bring up ego a lot, even to my team, because it is I think it causes the most conflict, not just in the professional workplace, but in the world. People needing to be right. If you're dealing with a more difficult personality, perceiving that as they're attacking me. I'll give you an example. Earlier on in my career, I had a recruiter that was working for me, and she went to my boss and said, I don't trust where Shannon is. I don't know what she's doing. I don't believe that she's working hard. When I was brought into his office and we sat down and talked about it, my immediate reaction, knowing how hard I was putting into my job and how important it was to me and what it meant for me, my immediate reaction was, what the hell? I didn't use that word. I used a word that I won't use right now. But it was immediately just, and at the time I didn't know that. Now I know, but it was ego. I stewed on that. I listened because we had that mediator there, but I just couldn't get over it. Like, how dare you? I thought we had a good relationship. What's happening? And when I slowed down and had a lot of good conversations with people that I trusted, I realized that my ego was at the forefront. It was so much about, like, how dare you attack me? How dare you not trust me when I am trustworthy? No one's ever said that I'm not trustworthy or not hardworking. And when I sought to understand where that was coming from her, she had a big issue with trust. She had people in her life that led her astray, and she didn't trust very easily. And so it was around transparency for her. That's what she needed. And so when I peeled the layers back, it wasn't about me, even though in any other world, like, you're going to take it like, what the hell? It was more about what she needed and the things that she had experienced in her life. And so that was really helpful for me to be able to regulate long-term that relationship. She's one of my closest people in my life right now. We still work together, but the things that she had brought to my attention that I just wasn't aware of, I implemented some of those things. So I shared my calendar with her. I was more intentional about explaining to her. We had daily meetups where I would explain, this is what I'm doing today. Do you have any questions? And through that, she trusted me. We built that trust. It was no longer just about me, and it helped her in her career, but also it's now a practice in our office. That's what we do in our office to build trust among people. So regulation is removing the ego first and slowing down, seeking to understand. And then from there, if you need more time is okay. This doesn't happen overnight. This probably, this is like a 3 to 6 month timeline of me getting to a point where I realized this was actually a really good thing. But the first thing with self-regulation is slowing down, removing your ego, seeking to understand, and then solutioning out from there. And it can show up in meditation, taking walks, like however it looks for you. That's kind of a self-discovery thing, but in the workplace, that's what it looked like for me.
I think the only thing I'd add is personal development. I encourage everyone. You can always learn something, right? And I think that you learn self-regulation through personal development and growth, right? So I think that there's not a time that you should stop learning, regardless of your senior VP versus the lady who started work yesterday, right? I think, you know, from that perspective, you learn more about yourself through personal development. I mean, I do agree the walk away, but, you know, I think to your point, sometimes you can't always walk away. Sometimes it starts with you. It always starts with you. It always starts with you understanding your hot buttons, what's gonna send you over the edge. We all have that one button where someone says, and it's like, through the roof we go. It's like, you know, I don't care how self-regulated you are, you know what I mean? And so, but the more you work on yourself and that personal development and taking the time to understand what makes you tick, what you like, what you don't like, what your boundaries are, it makes all those other things kind of come into better focus for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Terry. I work for Boeing. So my question is two-part, but you know, it's something that I have to deal with. As a technical leader, there are times when my words, my thoughts, even as I express them, a male colleague will say the same thing 5 seconds later, and suddenly the reaction would go from, I don't understand that when I say it, or that is such a beautiful idea. Like, same words, same tone of voice. And I struggle with self-regulating in situations like that because I look around the room and it's almost as if I'm the only one who recognized that I said something first. And I might be the only woman in the room when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do I self-regulate when there seems to be a gender-based power dynamic? That's my very specific
I
question.
love that question.
I do. I love that question too. Go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, that put me in all the feels and also took me back.
Yeah.
So, I'll answer from my lens, and it's over, it's not necessarily just in the moment, but over the course of years in building relationships. So, going back to advocacy and having people speak on your behalf, it's not just the people that may look like you, other women, other people of color. It may be the men in the room. It may be the one who is, you know, maybe has the good ideas, where you're kind of sitting down and asking about them and building that relationship, and seeking to understand. And over time, they're the ones that are speaking up with those things. So that's one way of, over time, maybe making that room a little bit more open to hearing all ideas and actually listening. In the moment, I mean, there's been times when I've said, that's what I said. And sometimes it's as simple as that. And it doesn't need to be like, oh, that's what I said.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what I said. And then people realizing, oh, that is what she said. I know that's a very simple answer. So one's like a long-term kind of solution, especially if the room is consistently the same. Like if you're working on like a project team where you're just continuing to work in those same rooms together. The other is just in the moment.
It's the same leadership crowd.
What?
It's the same leadership crowd. So yeah, the room tends to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's so good.
She actually took, that is exactly, I've used that before, and I've said the exact same thing. Because I think the thing is, we talk about self-regulating, you can do it as professionally, with that voice that just sounds just as kind as you said it when you said your really good idea and nobody heard you the first time. You know, it's the same thing. Wow, that sounds exactly what I just said. Thank you for agreeing with me. You know what I mean? But too, it's about tone and context, right? Because you don't want to seem like that you don't want to be that person at the table, right? But it's their tone and context will save the day in a lot of areas. But that's what I was going to say. I don't have any long-term plans. I come from that school of thought. We're going to talk about it kind of. And that's me being completely honest and transparent. Like, we're going to talk about it right here and now. And I think that's like the idea, is that's a great idea. I'm glad you agree with me. Oh, God, that sounds like what I just said. Thank you for, I love that level of concurrence in this meeting.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Yeah.
So good.
Sure, please. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, no, and listen, thank you. We want this to be as interactive as, yeah, we don't want to, because listen, we don't know it all, for sure.
I love that you said that because that is so true. If you're in the room and you see that happening, we owe that to each other that we do that for one another.
And to build those, so we talk about those sponsors and your advocates, and I'm going to encourage us as women. I love us as women, but you have got to get advocates that don't look like you. You've got to get sponsors that don't look like you. You've got to get mentors that don't look like you, that don't come from your background, that have different experiences. Because in that room, if you have a sponsor, they're going to say it for you. They're going to say, wow, Lisa just said that. But if you are so enslaved, and to me, I think that we should have people that look like us, but it's as important to have people that don't look like you in your career, in your space, in all those roles in your life.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I feel like I'm loud. I also feel like my question kind of goes more towards what you guys just discussed, but a different aspect. My name is Tyriana Dumont. I'm with the United States Army.
Awesome.
I am constantly I'm in a predicament where I will be the only female out of like 100 people. So tips or tricks you would give me to develop relationships with my subordinates, my team, my platoon, anything like that, but them not misconstrued my genuine, me being authentic and actually caring about my soldiers, I'm trying to sleep with my soldiers.
No. Well, first, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God, that's scary.
breaks my heart.
Well, first, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I think that's a hard one, because I think that the military has a different energy. Let's go. We're going to stay positive on this Friday the 13th. Let's just say it has a different energy. And so I do think it's hard. And I'll be honest, I don't live in that space, right? You know what I mean? And so I think I can only, kind of advise from the space that I personally come from, right? Which is you still build those relationships, right? Like, and again, there's some ancillary things that I'm not exposed to in your space, right? But I think that, and it almost, for me, in that case, is to kind of go back to my stomping ground I keep talking about. If you need to manage up, if you get people going this way, then it's easier to manage laterally, right? You know what I mean? Because the thing is this, if you're trying to build relationships with maybe like a subordinate, if you've got a leader that kind of knows your intention, has your back, giving you that direction, if it ever appears to be, it goes back to relationship, right? Oh, I know, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch her name, but she's not doing that. She's building it because she's trying to get to X, Y, and Z, right? So the only thing I would say in that case, I want to be authentic here, I would lead up first. I would go up first, build relationships that way, because I think it may be a little easier for you to build relationships this way if you lead up first.
I agree with that. I would also look to the set boundaries. So this, like if we're looking at the dial, you're probably dealing with a lot of individuals. You may need to dial up the boundaries that are maybe a little bit potentially more difficult. So that assertiveness and that boundary setting, if someone were to say something like that to you, stomping it out right away. That's where that setting boundaries, I think, again, it is a different situation. And my heart broke when you said that, when you agreed, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. But the boundary setting, that's when, get yourself out of your comfort zone. If that's super uncomfortable, people like that will respect that assertiveness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I love this. love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes, thank you.
Please, please, please.
This could maybe be its own session. Taking
I
notes.
love it. I love it.
I was the second woman in my career field when I was acting. They just opened my career field with 2 women. I was the second woman to graduate from my tech school, first woman in my shop. I had no rank, so it's hard to be able to set boundaries when you have to respect the rank but not the man. So there were things that were like, all the guys would talk about how good a weekend I have with everybody, because I must have been in the military to see through. And I was getting promoted, and I could it early, around the month, a quarter, for doing my job. The good thing was managing my supervisor, who had no rank, managed our shop. So when people would say, blah, 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 I'm like, you know, who said that? Because I'm gonna catch him. If he says that, he's taking out. My colleagues and the rank people at my rank started to recognize me. And I would get why don't you just in here and get a 5 minutes and get out? I got that one a lot. And I'm like,
Wow.
no, I'm going to do it. I'm trying to do the same job you do. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be a man. I'm not trying to outdo you. I'm not going to do the ego. I'm not going to try to outrun you, outlift you, outbeat you. If an aircraft is repairing you, I'm qualified to do that.
Wow. Love that.
My shop chief saw that. So he actually managed everybody. And it calmed a lot. So it's just setting the boundaries. You can't personalize that as hard as it is. And just keep it down and keep it down because it will get recognized by the people that matter. And those are the people that are going to champion their advocates. So that things are.
Awesome.
Do you have a comment?
I just want to make one comment. So there's an old saying that is lonely at the top. So as leaders, the consistency. So I can't do more for one that I don't do for the other. So I can avoid the oppression that I am sleeping with this one because I see you being more friendly with this one than I am the other. So if my leadership is consistent, so I do for one, I do for the other, it avoids the appearance that I'm favoring this one because I'm switching. So it is lonely at the time because I have to be consistent in my leadership.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Monica. I have a question on developing the relationships, and it kind of goes hand in hand with setting the boundaries. So coming in as an intern through the government, I have developed a lot of relationships, but now through my matriculation and where I am now, I'm kind of over some people and becoming a trainer to some. How do you not, those where he says it softens the impact, but I don't need the impact to be as soft. Like, where's the boundary to say, okay, yeah, I know that they didn't do this or they couldn't, like that's not them, but they did do it, where I can question it, where it doesn't look like, oh, I'm pulling rank, or it's received like it needs to be. I don't know if that makes sense.
Like, are you saying it, like they're supposed to be doing something, but you don't know if they're actually doing it, like their job?
Yeah. So where if I need to question their job. So the example earlier was, okay, if something came up and we know them because we've worked with them and like, oh, they wouldn't do that, or I know their work ethic. But now I'm in the role where I do need to question it, but I don't know how to question it because I don't want to seem like, oh, you're new to this position or you're pulling rank on me, or it's that like work boundary friendship thing.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, I think it's hard. So I think what I think I hear you saying is that you were peers and now you're a leader.
In a sense, yeah.
Okay, that's a hard transition. Let me just say that out of the gate, right? I mean, that's a very hard transition, and boundaries are imperative, right? Because it's hard to go from a peer to a leader, especially if you were friends, you know, kind of with those peers, right? For me, I think boundaries are critical there, right? And I think it's never personal, right? Kind of as I mentioned before, respect is required, liking is optional, right? And so, I mean, I would encourage you to just lead.
Okay.
Be a leader. If you were you were selected for the role or you were promoted, it sounds like, to the role, own that. and there's no really easy way to make that transition. I mean, again, I'm not gonna fluff it, right? There is no easy, because I mean, I've actually been there. I've actually been a team member that had to, and it's hard, and it sucks some days, right? Especially if these are people like, your salespeople. So we hang out, we drink at happy hour, and then it's like all of a sudden, it's like, so you only made 2 sales yesterday. Talk to me about it, right? And so it's hard, but you have to lean into it. You have to lean into what your skill set is. You have to lean into your strength. You have to lean into your leadership. And hopefully they will respect your position and you enough to just understand, I'm not questioning you or your work. I'm questioning your work. And I think that you can also make that delineation as well. I'm not questioning you or our friendship or maybe what we had here. I'm questioning what you have to deliver, because guess what? I have to deliver too. If you don't deliver, I don't deliver. It's all, so yeah, it's about setting those and delineating those 2 roles.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and also not assuming that the boundary is just going to be set because you're in that role now, and saying this is what it is. But if you have that relationship, that's the first part. Like, that's a really a good thing to have. And then just being vulnerable with it and saying, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable right now because I appreciate you. I know that you work hard. I know we have this relationship. Now I'm in this role. And so some of the things that I may be asking you, it's not a knock to you, if that's the case.
Okay.
And then going from there. So it's just you're level setting. Like, you're vulnerable with them. Like, this is where I'm at, but I need to do this so that we can both be successful, or whatever the case is. And then moving from there. But that respect has to be there. The care and respect has to be there. And if they're not doing their job, I mean, we have this thing at our work, trust and verify. It's not a new term. Everyone probably uses it. But that's an expectation. Like, my team knows that. I trust you, because the moment that you do something where I don't trust you, like, that's a boundary, right? So I trust you, but I'm also going to verify, and I'm going to verify not just with you, but with everyone. So it's an equal playing ground, and it's to benefit them.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and also think from the other person's perspective. So that person was your peer. So for them to acknowledge that you have moved to the next role would take time. So give them space.
Absolutely.
Time.
I love that.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I add that?
Sure.
We are all highly motivated, and the fact that you stepped into that role and you've made it to the next level to where you're helping others to learn what you already learned and what you're capable of doing is an accomplishment. And sometimes our self-talk is it's what drives us to be able to do that next level and do that next thing. And I find sometimes, personally for myself, my self-talk sometimes is very harsh. And it's very, like, in my face. And that's 45 years is going to be hard to break me out of that. As a leader, what I have to be mindful of is to not do the self-talk that I do to myself to the people that I lead.
I love
That
that.
it is individual. And I have to approach each person and what is it that motivates them and get them to the next level and get them to be able to do all these things so that I don't have to do them anymore. So be very mindful of giving feedback in a manner in which that it is personal and where you care about that person. And definitely don't let your own self-talk be all that comes out, because sometimes it's not appropriate for that person. They may not be able to handle my self-talk.
I love that.
Hello, my name is Jessica. I'm from Aurora Flight Sciences. My question is also on the technical leadership side, particularly when you're a young leader in charge of a team that is more than likely older than you, more experienced than you, and they are having difficult personality conflicts. But at the end of the day, there's still a solution that needs to happen. So can you talk about how you apply these strategies in managing a difficult personality set within your team when it really isn't about you?
Yep. So this is a recent. Yep.
I was going to say, I just felt that from you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, it's a difficult thing to do. And hopefully my situation would also apply to you, because it's very similar. I had 2 people on my team doing slightly different things, but we need to work together to win. And they were not getting along. And so me being the leader, one would come to me and say, I don't like this person and what they're doing. Then the other person would come to me and I don't like this person, I don't like what they're doing. And so what I did was I kind of went through a series of these with each person, because what we can't control is what other people do. We can control how we react and what we do moving forward. So telling them like, hey, I know that they're upsetting you, but why are they upsetting you? Let's remove the ego. Let's take a step back. Being intentional, sometimes we can get wrapped up in feelings, so a lot of it is feeling based. Try to live in the facts of what are they actually doing, or what are you observing that they're doing. So observing what they're doing, how does that impact you? So how is it impacting you? Is it impacting the business? Is it impacting your performance, or do you just not like them? Because if it's like, I just don't like them, it's like, okay, well, get over yourself, we've got a job to do. But if there's a reason, like, hey, it's making me feel a certain way because I'm observing them doing this to me, then that's what you can then talk to them about, giving that feedback to them. So when you are a leader and you are trying to deal with that personality conflict, for me, it always starts right there. Let's control you first and your reaction to that. If that's not the solution, then let's look at a way that you can deliver that feedback, because now we have actual, here's what they're doing, because no one likes someone who's giving you feedback and it's like, I just don't like the way you do this. It's like, okay, what do you want me to do about that? That's who I am, right? So living in the facts of what did you observe they're doing, and how is it impacting you or the business, and then maybe what's that solution, and giving them, I role play it with my team, like with those people individually. Okay, let's role play it. And then when are you gonna give that feedback to them? I mean, you have to hold them, because no one wants to give feedback to someone. So hold them to it. Okay, you're gonna do it by end of week. Okay, so you're gonna do it by Friday? At what time? When can I expect for you to follow up with me? Like, hold them to it, to the actual time, and then put a reminder in to follow up with them. So doing that on both sides, sometimes that's the way. This last situation, we went through all of the phases, and I finally just sat them down in a room and said, you both don't like each other. We have a job to do. Let's just hash it out right now. They agreed that they both didn't like each other and kind of laughed. They just laughed. And then they're like, okay, so we have that in common. And then we have solutions. It was wild. But so far, that was about 3 weeks ago, and we are good. So there's a different phases, but it is really hard. And if you're in a role where people have got to get along to get to the end game, that's what you got to do. And at the end of the day, it's about respect. So either way, respecting each other is important, or is an expectation? That's a good question. It's really hard, and go through all of the things. That's my answer.
Hi, Latoya from General Motors. So to start my career, I started as a leader, and then I transitioned into an individual contributor. And so with that, I had, as we all know, as we navigate our careers, we have different leaders, different personalities. And for me, I found a few of my male leaders that I had some issues with. And I would say one in particular was very harsh, domineering, and aggressive in how he approached me. Although I displayed what I did on a day-to-day, showed my skills, what I brought to the team. When we had conversations, one-on-ones, it was very aggressive and loud and like kind of yelling in a way. So as we all have performance reviews, I was kind of skeptical about what that would look like. So my question to you all is, how do you navigate those types of relationships when you have different leaders that may present themselves that way?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
And I think you have some specifics in there, so I'm going to walk through this with you, and hopefully we get to them.
Yeah.
But if you need to jump in, just jump in. Okay, so what he's doing is he's domineering, he's loud, and how does him doing that impact you?
Well, initially it impacted me emotionally because I'm the type of person that I'm very transparent, and when you come with me to me a certain way, I'm going to come back to you a certain way.
Listen, I meet your energy. I meet your energy. So I do have just a quick question. Was that behavior with everyone else as well, or just with you? Because I want to make sure I answer it, because it's a great question, and I want to make sure I'm clear. Was that his behavior in general, or was that behavior that you felt like was directed more in your direction?
So to be quite transparent, I was the only Black female and the only Black person in our group, and he was male African American.
See, but then that's a whole different, like, that's a whole different session. That's a whole different, that takes okay, so then that takes a whole different, you want to keep going, because I want to give you a really good answer. I want to give you a really good answer.
Have a good answer, or you?
No, you guys should keep going down your road.
I don't know.
I just want some context about
I feel
her
like
question.
there's layers here that maybe I can't provide. But we'll just keep going. Okay, so it impacts you because it makes you feel a certain way, and it's impacting you doing work?
In a way it did, because he would also kind of take sides, right? And with that, it would affect me in a way where I would kind of be siloed, right? Mm-hmm. So I would get to myself and not necessarily interact because I would see and observe. Mm-hmm. And so that would affect how I performed.
Do you have a relationship with him, or have you?
Yes, I've had a prior professional relationship with him, and then he became my leader.
Okay, have you had a conversation with them of, hey, this is what you're doing and it's impacting me in this way, and I don't want to read into it, but it is affecting me. Can we just talk through it? Like, have you had that conversation?
No. I've never had that conversation. He's no longer my leader. I've never had that conversation with him. I just move differently, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So that would be my recommendation. If you get in that situation again, which is bound to happen, it's hard, but remove the ego. There's a lot of assumptions that we can do just purely based on body language and voice, how people are talking to us. And so we can have a lot of assumptions, but if we're not bringing that conversation to them, it's almost unfair to them because maybe they don't realize that that's how they're landing. And so bringing that to their attention and saying, hey, this is the way that you're coming off to me, this is what I'm observing, and this is the way that it's impacting me. It may not just be you, it may be other people. So you're not just speaking up for yourself, but you could be speaking for other people in the room or other people that person is interacting with. And hopefully they take it as like a positive, maybe what I can do. What their reaction is, we can't control, but we can control what we do with it. And then that's, we did what we could do.
I will say that I did have one ally that was on my team, and he did overhear the screaming outside of the conference room, and he did approach the manager about that.
That's
good.
Good.
Which was good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is hard. I'm gonna say something, and it sounds profound, but it's hard. Never let another person knock you off what you bring to the table. Never let them knock you off to where you don't come as your full self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So sometimes they do it to intimidate, to make you smaller. Mm-hmm. Push past that. Know that you are who you are and as wonderful as you are, and never let, no matter what the obstacle is, no matter what the leader is in front of you, knock you off that game. Now that doesn't mean don't take feedback.
Right.
But always bring that. Wake up every morning. This is what I'm bringing, and I'm worthy. I'm worthy of the space that I'm taking up. Take up that space.
Mm-hmm. No,
And I would tell you that actually made me stronger in my career, just that one experience. So I see what it is to be a good leader, and I see what it is not to be a good leader,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So that makes me become a greater leader for when I step into that role. So
Again, yeah. I just have maybe two thoughts, right? I think my first thought is they're leaders and they're managers. Mm-hmm. If you don't know the difference, you never had a great leader.
Yeah.
Right. But I think not everybody's meant to lead. right? But I think I'm feeling there was something else there in that piece, and we can be our own worst advocate to each other, right? You know what I mean? And so I think there was some of that. But I will say this, is that I do agree, you got to call a thing a thing. You got to call a thing a thing. This isn't working. And if this is how you lead, that's cool, then I'm going to remove myself from this space, right? But what I'm not going to do is be subjective, because when we said scream, and I'm like confused. I'm like, he was doing what? Like, we don't do that. Yeah, no, we don't scream at each other. Respect is required. And so, but I mean, I would have definitely had the conversation. I mean, I personally would have just had the conversation because I wanted to understand, is it me? Is it you? Is this your leadership style? Let me understand what's really, really working right here, right? And then I think through that, you could figure out what was really happening, right? Because I think that we can be the worst to ourselves, right? And so with that, you want to call it out, because sometimes it's just, we don't know necessarily also what he had to get to where he was, right? So some of that could likely be baggage as well. So that's a great question. There's just a lot to unpack there, right? I mean, there's a whole lot to unpack in that story, but I definitely would have talked about it with him first, understood where he was coming from, understood what his baggage was, because again, we don't know what it took to get him there. And at the end of the day, not everyone was meant to lead people. They just weren't. There needs to be a path for people to progress through their career that does not mean a people leader. I know so many unqualified people leaders because there was nothing else to do with them. They got to a point and it was like, okay, you got to go make and that's not everyone's path. It's just not. And I think that people like you who don't move or if you suffer because we've got leaders that shouldn't be leading people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Check your company policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
There were a couple of times when I have gone through similar situations with my clients, and I called it out. I said, you are being disrespectful. After that, I didn't have afterthoughts wondering whether I did the right thing to call it out. But I noticed that immediately the tone became calmer. And then I also knew that something is not right. The relationship is not is broken. So then I worked on fixing it, but first I called it out because I couldn't take it in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Trista Kirkland. I'm with the United States Marine Corps. So I've never had the issue with setting boundaries. Maybe it's my face. But one of the issues that I do have is I'm an equal opportunity advisor, so I do facilitate like a lot of conflict management sessions. However, I think myself, I have conflict with like senior leaders, and the reason with that is being like, I don't get recognized for my hard work. I work not nights, weekends sometimes. I have like a 24/7 duty phone. I'm the only person in the geographical area that can do my job. And I don't get recognized for it, so I feel like I guess I'm not being I guess what's the word I'm looking for?
Validated.
Appreciated, right?
Validated.
Yeah. So it like bothers me, but it's like if I say something, I don't want to come off as aggressive, because a lot of people always say that I'm aggressive. They always omit the assertiveness of myself. I'm very passionate about my job, so how do I address that situation?
Can I ask you a question first? So thank you for your service, first of all, again. What are you really seeking in that space?
What am I seeking? Okay, so one, I would guess like I'm seeking for, I don't want to say see, I give a lot of my time to the community, right? I volunteer a lot, and it's like no one ever says like, you know, I go into a brief, I give training, and then they say, oh, I'm aggressive, my training is too strong, and then they'll come back and talk to me about that, but they won't appreciate the hard work that I'm doing. So it's like they always bring up the negative, but not the positive. And then my training isn't even negative. Like, it's just like, you know, I get really passionate. I'm very loud. I'm from South Carolina, but they don't bring that up, right? So I'm like, they ain't asked me anything about me. I'm loud because I'm from the woods, right? So.
That's the funniest thing I've heard all day today. That is hilarious. I'm loud because I'm from the woods. That is absolutely hilarious. I mean, I think what I hear you say is you're looking for validation, and that's not a bad thing, right? Like, being validated, we all want to be validated for what we do, right? And so I think, I want to be careful about my answer here. Sometimes we have to self-validate, right? I think it's great to be recognized for, you know, those weekends and those hours that you do. But sometimes until it's recognized here, you gotta self-validate. But my question is, like, so like performance reviews, are they recognizing, like, I mean, are you like excelling from that perspective?
Listen, that's how we get promoted, is like getting these validations. And I'm like people with lesser work don't do nothing. I'm like, work-life balance, I don't have that, but they do, right?
And do you have those relationships? Do you have advocates and sponsors in your space?
No, and that's one of the things that I think I have an issue with is, like, I lost my monitor, or I said my monitor, but my my mentor, and so we don't really like communicate that much. Just due to location and then time zone differences. But I think my main issue is that I work really hard. However, I see people that do less work get recognized, so it kind of like bothers me. And then so like when I come with it with facts, and then I come with it with, I don't want to, passion. And so, like, I think people like get afraid of me, and then now they're like, oh no, you know, whatever. And then it's nice, and not so nice things are being said about me. Then now I have to attack that. So it's like, I'm coming at all kinds of angles, and I'm like, I don't know. So I'm just trying to be patient. That's one thing I think I really have to do, is like be patient. But the thing is like 7 years, I'm like, how much more patient I gotta be, you know?
So twofold. I'd like to set that offline with you. We've only got, I saw my 10-minute warning in the back. But I would encourage you to get advocates inspired, because you can't be an island. You don't win on an island. You don't. No one wins on an island. No, I don't care what it looks like. No one wins on an island. They just don't. Again, it may look that way. There are people pushing buttons. There are people making phone calls. You are not on an island. You never are. But let's take this offline. We'll be available. Did you want to chime in there for a second?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I don't know if it's going to work in this situation, but sometimes lifting those around you lifts yourself, like, will lift you up. And so if you're wanting that personal validation, which is totally fine, like that's a love language, right? Like it is what it is. Lifting people around you, it's almost like a part of your legacy. So when you're lifting other people up and you're more focused on them, that's when that return will happen. And that's a long game play. 7 years. Thank you for your service.
Oh, no, I've been in 21 years. I'm saying
21 years.
I've been in 21 years. Working on.
Well, I never would have guessed that. So good for you.
Thank you.
But yes, it's that's the way that, because you don't win on an island, and so that would be my recommended advice. Oh my God.
Yeah. Can we get to her last question, and then we can go back to her? I just don't want to get kicked out. I feel like we're going to be on that show where they take us off with like the cane.
5 minutes? All right. Last question, and we'll come back to.
Hi, sorry, thank you. My name is Daisy Ann. So I'm really young in my career, so this was a kind of a situation where after the fact that it happened, I was like, wait, I feel like this shouldn't be happening. So a week, 2 weeks into when I started my career, I was thrown into this project, and of course there's like recurring meetings that happen, and when you start off, you just send the calendar invite and you join. So there weren't any main introductions, but after the meeting, there was a team that was working on a project, and we're like in the second part of like taking over the project. And the lead manager was like, "Who is this Daisy Ann? Like, what are you doing here?" Like on the team's meeting. And I'm gonna get to like my question, but it kind of threw me off guard because that was the first meeting invite that I had gotten, and the person that I was working with on the project actually had to interject and like, "Oh, she's new to the company, she just started, and she's been doing an amazing job," kind of just like putting and like giving me my flowers, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I was a little bit thrown back because I was like, that's an odd thing to say. Even if I hadn't done any introductions, I think that it's kind of rude to ask people that in meetings. So my question is, again, after the meeting, everyone was sharing their inputs and thoughts. And again, because it was my first meeting, I'm still learning about the project. I didn't have any questions because I didn't even know what was going on, so I wasn't speaking. So I think that was also an issue. So I guess he asked, like, "What are you doing here? Like, you're not speaking, everyone's sharing their opinions and thoughts." So I guess my question is, if you're new to your career and you're invited to like all these meetings and you're working on a project, how do you navigate speaking and sharing your ideas, especially if it's very nerve-wracking for you to speak in front of a lot of people? How do you, I guess, do that? And then another thing I saw myself doing after that comment, I felt like I had to share and respond to all these emails like on the side about, so we have like technical review meetings which go over, do you agree with this, share your input, and I feel myself answering more so than I would because I don't share a lot in meetings. And again, I guess you could talk about being validated a little bit, so if you only need to like overshare or stuff like that. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, it does. I think probably my quick answer, and then we can kind of go back to that, is it's okay to be quiet in meetings. Like, it's okay. Like, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I think I tend to be quiet. I mean, I want to hear everything first. I want to assess what's going on. So don't let silence be a challenge necessarily, right? Now, you do need to speak up when there's something valid to say, but just that chatter for chatter's sake I don't recommend that.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
Yeah.
And the fact that you came up here and you're standing right here leads me to believe that you can do that whenever you're passionate about something or you feel confident in something. So that will come. But it's also, you didn't like how that felt. So as you move along in your career, don't forget that and don't treat other people that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to talk to you after as well. We'll be here for a little bit.
Thank you.
There were hands on the other question.
Yes, but I'll
Because they're actually getting ready to throw us out of here, but let's keep going. Yep.
And being new too and sitting in on a meeting, like you said, being silent isn't a negative.
Yeah, it's not that. Absolutely.
Taking in all this information and people who've been there longer, you're
People like to hear themselves talk. Don't be that person.
Agreed.
Don't be that person.
We have a hand over here.
Yeah.
Trista.
Very good thing to do for your performance.
Document, yeah.
Every success, every accomplishment, every little accomplishment, including your performance.
They can write those out of here.
They get you recognize that from there. That's how you get promotions. It's document, dates, everything.
Okay, one more comment?
2 minutes.
Is that 2 minutes? Okay, 2-minute warning.
Oh, did you hear I was in the Marine Corps?
No. So, okay. So, 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, in February.
So I have a career, and I'm really old, and I have a long career. And I was military as well.
Ladies, gentlemen, we have to close out our session and leave the room, but we can
We can keep
walk.
talking, yes, we can
talk
keep,
all
we gotta
day.
officially close
Yes,
out.
but I just have to close this down. But
They're gonna
thank you
examine
so
us
much
out.
for all your comments and
Yes, thank you.
participating. Very good.